Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Claudine Hemingway is a descendant of famed writer Ernest Hemingway. We bumped into each other at a party and decided to team up and dive deep into French history, but with a twist, by bringing a spotlight to those lesser-known creatives in France. This is History with a Hemingway.
Welcome back to Paris History, Avec Hemingway, and today we're talking about Les Halles, which was a famous market area in Paris, which is now a giant shopping mall, but Claudine will tell us all about that, and this is going to be a two-part episode because there is just so much to talk about.
Yeah, sadly, it's not my favorite part of Paris, which I think a lot of people would say. I guess I'm fully Parisian when I hate anything that's new, right?
You are.
Les Halles itself, as we said, it used to be an old market, and we'll get to that. But we're going to start this one over at one of the newest museums that's in Paris now. It's called the Bourse de Commerce. It's the Pinot collection. The building itself, though, is really cool. It's filled with contemporary art. But if that's not your jam, where it's kind of not really mine either, go and just to see the building on the inside, because it's pretty amazing. It was built in 1763. It's this round building. It's very hard to miss. It was built where the former chateau of Catherine de Medici was. And just a few weeks ago, when we talked about the Tuileries, I told you about the story about when she died, and how she was told before she died that she was going to die near Saint-Germain. And she ended up leaving the Palais de Tuileries before it was finished, and then came back to her chateau, her palace that was here, at where the Bourse de Commerce is. And that's where she thought, she got away from it. And then she found out as she was dying that the doctor's middle name was Saint-Germain, which is still one of my favorite stories. But she used to have a palace here. When she died, it was demolished, and it was built. A building was created to hold and store grain and wheat. And so the Bourse de Commerce, ended up being a stock exchange. And basically the stock exchange was all the commodities like grain and wheat and everything. In 1782, the dome was added on top. It was later destroyed in 1802 by a fire, but in 1855, it became the stock exchange. And then after that fire, they ended up adding the dome back, and I'll tell you about what's inside it. It's pretty cool. In 2016, the city of Paris leased it to Francois Pinault, who is a billionaire. He's one of the richest men in the world, to house his contemporary art collection of more than 5,000 pieces. He also has a building, I believe it's in the south of France, that also he had created to hold his art collection.
Yeah, you're right. In the south, yep.
Yeah. It finally opened on May 22nd, 2021. It had obviously been put off a lot by COVID. But inside, when you go in there, and it's a pretty good size space. So when we say he has 5,000 pieces, there's probably 5 in this museum. The center is this huge round room, and there's usually just like one thing in the center of this room, and that's it. Yeah. So there's not a lot, and then there's a lot of exhibitions that they have around the whole outside of it as you go up. So it might, it's not really holding a ton of art that's inside there. But inside the dome, it was painted in 1889, and it was fully restored. It has 5 different artists that did it, and it represents commerce in different parts of the world. And it includes America, Russia, Europe, Africa, and Asia. Each one also having different parts of of architecture from those places, and also animals. It's really interesting. And when you go up, you could go actually up to the top and get a closer look at it. as you walk around. It's really, really interesting, and it's really well done. The museum is usually pretty popular. There's always a line out there. So if it's something you want to go to, I always say if it's something you really, really want to see, get your ticket and go first thing in the morning. And then that way, you just could kind of wander around the rest of your afternoon and pop into things. But depending on the exhibit, they recently had one. Did you see when they had that silver horse out front?
Yeah, isn't that still there?
I think it is still there. I think when stuff is there, it's there for like 8 months.
Yeah.
But then they also had one when it first opened where it was like this little mechanical mouse that there was a hole on the wall, kind of close to the floor, and the mouse every once in a while would stick his head out. I thankfully did not see it because even though it was mechanical and was fake, I would still freak me out.
Yeah, it is pretty creepy.
But the building is really cool. They have like a little gift shop there, like every museum, and they have a book there that's all about the architecture of the museum. It is in French, but it is really cool. I was really excited when I found that. So it is interesting, but it is probably one of those museums I actually did not spend a ton of time in, because there was one exhibition that was, I think it had like 180 pictures of the same exact like to-go coffee cup.
What?
And each one of them represented a senator in the United States. It was really random. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm looking at. Every one of these is the same.
Yeah.
And everybody was like stopping and looking at each one. Like, I'm like, they're all the same. What are you looking at? Obviously, I'm not a contemporary art person. But
Yeah, me either.
yeah, it was, the building, but go inside the building is really gorgeous. And right outside there, when you walk out, you will find one of the greatest cooking stores in the entire world. And it's E. Doulerian. It opened in 1820. So it's over 200 years old now. It's been in the same family for 5 generations. And this is not like your Williams Sonoma where everything's like beautifully displayed and laid out. You go in there and it's just so cool. There's just this wall or this huge area that is just all these like, wood bins, and they have like every size whisk you'd ever want. They have every size French rolling pin you would ever want. The copper that's on the wall is just amazing. It is the coolest store, and I know that you guys went in there because Giuseppe loves to cook. And the first time I went there, I had to go there, and I bought a French rolling pin that is now, I'm shipping it back to Paris. A French rolling pin, and I think a tiny whisk is the 2 things, because I was like, what is easy to pack?
Oh my gosh, Giuseppe bought the same stuff for his birthday. That's so funny.
I know, it's so, I absolutely love it. It's so cool. But it's also really cool because that's where Julia Child shopped. And the day we are recording this is the anniversary of when Julia Child passed. Rest in peace. But she shopped there all the time. And there's pictures of her hanging on the wall. She would stop in there and shop. And then she'd sit there with them at the counter and have a glass of wine and chat with them. It was just, I can't even imagine seeing Julia Child in there. But go downstairs too, because there's even more downstairs. And it's just the coolest place because it's not, you could probably find every size mold you would ever want to make like candies or chocolates or, in silicone and steel, and it's just, you have to go in there. If you know somebody that is a cook and they love those kinds of things, it's a great place to get gifts from. And you could also order from them online and they'll ship things to you.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah. But it's also where my other favorite, Anthony Bourdain, went. And on one of his shows, I can't remember, maybe it was a No Reservations, one of the early versions of his shows, but he went in there to buy the duck press. And the duck press that, is so famous from the Tour d'Argent, where they take the carcass of the duck after it's been cooked and everything, and they put it in this thing, and it looks like a torture device, and they just crank it, and it basically squishes all of the juices and everything. It sounds really gross.
Oh, gross.
But he had it on the show, and then he was talking the whole time in this such Anthony Bourdain way of being like, oh, my neighbors are going to love to hear this, and I'll invite people over for dinner. And then after he died, they had an auction online of a bunch of his stuff, and that was in it. And I can't remember how much it sold, but I was like, oh, that would be amazing to have that, even though I would probably never use it, but it would be like just a great piece of art almost.
Yeah, exactly.
That's contemporary art. I'd get into.
Punching things.
Yeah. Also, right there is another restaurant that is one of the oldest restaurants in Paris, and it has two claims to fame. Au Pied de Cochon. It was open in the 18th century when it was the belly of Paris, and that's what Les Halles was once called, and we'll tell you why in a little bit. But this is kind of where the soupe à l'oignon, the French onion soup that we love so much, was kind of pretty much invented. And it's not the soup itself, but the best part of the soup that was kind of invented there. Louis XV was said that he came up with the French onion soup, but at that time it was just the broth with the onions. And we all know that the best part of the soup is the bread and all of the melted cheese on top.
Yeah, that's the best part.
And so it was basically there that they had that created, because it is such a filling soup, just even without the bread and the cheese, that it would be, it would help serve all of those people working in the market right outside. The restaurant itself, when it opened up and it was selling the soup to everybody, they were open 24 hours a day. And that lasted, that they were open 24 hours a day since 1946 until sadly COVID. Because then of course they had to close.
Oh.
Yeah. It was, just after World War II, a gentleman named Clement Blanc was the original owner. He decided to keep it open. He was the one that wanted to open it for 24 hours a day. It was at one point the only one in Paris that was open every single day. After the Les Halles market moved out to Rungis, they ended up, not being as popular because all their customer base was there from the market. In 1977, it was when Jacques Chirac went there when he won as the mayor, and Francois Mitterrand also celebrated his win there in 1981. I imagine if you've been there, I imagine the Les Halles version when it was the market, it was not quite as fancy as it is now.
Yeah, I think it was a little different.
Have you been there?
Nope.
Well, I have been, and I still have trauma when I walk by it, because the first time I went there, because my grandparents loved French onion soup. I just recently found a picture of my grandma eating a bowl of French onion soup in Paris. So I can't wait to take that back and recreate it. But my grandpa would always put in his diaries, very good. And he'd underlined it, very good French onion soup. But he never put where this was. He never once wrote which restaurant he was at. Mm-hmm. So I also love French onion soup, or soupe à l'oignon. And so I decided, well, I have to go there and try it. So I went there and I ordered the soup, and then I ordered the Au Pied de Cochon. And I was like, the lady, and I was just by myself, and the lady's like, are you sure? And I was like, oui. And she was like, get looking. She asked me 3 times if I was sure. And I was like, oui, bien sûr. And then she walked away. And then I realized what I ordered. I don't know in my head what I thought I was ordering. Maybe I thought I was ordering steak frites. And I went, oh, crud. And then I was like, oh my God. And then I was just like, I was so adamant that, yes, I know what I'm doing, that I was like, I'm fully invested at this moment. And so I just was like, okay. And I just kept ordering wine. And then I was texting with this French guy I met the whole time. So it actually ended up being I was telling him and sending him photos of it, and he was in hysterics and I was in hysterics, and it came out, and it was this most disgusting thing. And I grew up, my parents at one point had a meat shop, and I grew up running around the cooler with the sides of beef and chasing my sister with a beef tongue. Those things back then didn't freak me out. Now seeing what was a fried piece of a pork foot, for those of you that don't speak French, that's what it means. It means the foot of the pig. It was fried and crust on the outside, and I was just like, oh my God. And I was picking at it, and then I was like, I don't even see what there is to eat on this. And so I just kept picking and moving things around, and then just kept drinking wine.
Oh my gosh. And you had to pay for that. Gross.
I did. And I was just it ended up being I was laughing kind of hysterically. I did go back again, and this time I did not make the mistake. I did have the French onion soup and something else, and it's a very lovely place. But the door handle, when you walk in, it is a bronze pig foot that looks just like the one that was on my plate.
So gross.
It was so gross. And I just like, there's just some things I can't do that
Never
ever
again.
again.
Never again.
No. So just a word of warning to anybody.
Stay away from the pig foot.
Unless that's your thing. It is a very, it's kind of like what is the andouille sausage? Like it's kind of an old French thing. Like people love it. Like French people, older French people absolutely love it.
Not me.
Nope, not me. I tried. I think I even tried to take a bite of it, but I just was like, nope, can't do this. And it was probably like 35 euros or something ridiculous.
Oh, girl, even worse.
Yeah, but I drank my share of wine and I was laughing hysterically sitting there by myself. So people probably thought I was crazy. But do go. And at the end of your meal, it comes out with these little pink meringue piggies.
That's kind of disturbing and cute, I guess.
Kind of. It is kind of disturbing and cute, but they taste a lot better than that foot.
All bad news.
Yeah. But when you walk out of the restaurant after you have your very traumatizing experience, look back towards the Bourse de Commerce, and another one of my favorite things, and this until just, I think it was last fall, it finally was uncovered. Since the first time I went to Paris, this thing was completely shrouded, covered up because they were restoring it. On the backside of the Bourse de Commerce is the Colonne de Médicis, and it was created. It's the only part of that palace that Catherine de Medici had that still remains. It was built in 1575 by Jean Boulon. It was next to the Hotel de la Rien, which is where she lived. She had it built because she, as we talked about when we did the podcast episode all about her, she was, really into her seers and astrology and getting all of these, messages from beyond. So she wanted something to be built so that she could go up there and, talk with the heavenly skies or guide her into what she's doing. But apparently didn't work because she ended up dying next to her worst nightmare. But she had this created. It's really, really cool. If you go, when you look at it, if you stand from behind and you look up at it, there is kind of almost looks like a bird cage on the very top. But she would actually walk all the way up to the top, and there were like different like telescopes in the very top of it. But it's the only thing that is still left of the palace, and it has a huge plaque on the outside of it, and it's really cool, and it's just kind of exciting. I was just kind of excited to see it when it was finally put up there.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, but I don't think they don't let anybody go up there, sadly, which is kind of a bummer because that would be kind of cool to be able to go up there and see it from the top.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
One day.
One day we could maybe get up there. Maybe we could get
Giuseppe to get a job there.
I know Giuseppe needs to get a job there. But when you walk back behind, there is a little tiny street that kind of goes back behind if you take a left from the Pied de Cochon, it's this little tiny street called the Rue de Jour, the street of the day. It is a former walkway that was sat just inside the wall of Philippe Auguste, and that was the first wall that went around Paris. It's just a really cute little street. On that street, there is a fire department. The pompiers are there. And there's a really cool light out front, and it disappeared for a while, and then it came back. I was really excited. I think they took the glass out. But it is one of the oldest street lamps that is for the pompiers. And so instead of clear glass, the glass is red, and then it says pompier on it. So it was kind of cool that they had it redone. Hopefully some troublemaker didn't break it. But they used to be all over the city, and now that's the only one that's left.
You know what else is missing today? Someone stole the plaque off of Van Gogh's house.
Oh no, on Rue Le Pic?
Yeah, so it's gone. Maybe.
How rude.
Yeah. Well, I hope no one steals the light.
No, hopefully not. Yeah, there was something else recently. Oh, it was a tomb. I can't remember where I read it. It was a tomb in one of the cemeteries, and it was covered with like a really great piece of art by a sculptor, and somebody stole it because it was a dispute within the heirs of that sculptor that had died.
That is so weird.
And one of them's like, I'm just going to take it so you don't have it.
Oh my gosh. Jerk move.
Yeah, total jerk move. But on this little street, I just love, this is one of those little streets that you love. It's kind of like the streets that you have up there around Montmartre, where if you just go down around the corner of one street, you get like a really amazing view of, the Sacré-Cœur, like in your little park that you love.
Yeah.
The Rue de Jour is definitely one of those streets. But on this street, there is a gate, and there's an entrance to the building. When you look up, you see the side of Saint-Eustache, which is gorgeous. But this little gate is the former gate at the Hotel Roy-Moyon, and it dates back to 1360. It was originally the abbey that was there. It was originally built there. In 1612, the abbot Philippe Hérault-Giverny had it torn down and built a new abbey there. The Cardinal Archbishop of Bordeaux, Francois de Sordy, rented it to a gentleman named Francois de Montmorency-Bouteville. He came from a very old French family that was, they were mostly known because they were always getting into duels.
Into duels.
I know that. I mean, how it's so funny. Like, we are very well known because we usually kill people, because obviously if they're well known for it, they're not the ones that died.
That's the killers.
Yeah. It's, of course, a very old practice in France, and it had been outlawed. But it was rarely enforced. It ended up catching the death sentence until Richelieu removed it. So it's kind of like, if you're in a duel, you've got a 50-50 chance you're going to be killed by this other person, or you're going to be sentenced to death.
Oh, perfect. Love
So
that.
it was kind of like, why would you even do it? But Montmorency had a duel with a gentleman named Jacques de Matignon. They would lead to his death, which was forced because he ended up killing him, and Montmorency had to flee to Belgium. He returned on May 12, 1627. A second duel was set for the relative of Matignon, who wanted to avenge his death. It took place in the garden of Palais Royal.
Oh, wow.
But so this is like 1627, but don't you just envision it now under, like, the chestnut trees and the lovely, like, under the window of
family
Paulette.
portraits there.
I know. It's right in front of La Numar. No. Yeah, but both ended up surviving.
There's no winner there.
No winner there. Well, they were both winners, I guess. Matignon escaped to England, and Montmorency was arrested, and he was beheaded on the Place de Grève, which is now the Place de Hotel de Ville, on June 22nd, 1627.
What? They killed him anyway.
They killed him anyway. But the Hotel de Raymond was later torn down, but the gate remained, as well as the cellar in the basement. And it's now considered a historic structure. It's really cool. It's one of those things where the building behind it is obviously newer, but not like contemporary new. But the gate, I love finding those. There's a few of those in Paris. There's one in the Marais as well, where like they've just left kind of the entrance. And it's so cool, because it just what makes Paris so awesome.
I want to go look for it now.
Yeah, but you could, when you stand there, you should definitely go, because you could probably get some amazing photos, because the Saint-Eustache, which is what we'll talk about next week, the Saint-Eustache just like towers over it. It's a really great spot to go.
Yeah, thanks for the recommendation.
Also on that street, and I believe this is still sadly closed, but there's a really tiny little museum, and it's going to sound kind of odd, but it is the Musée du Barreau de Paris. It is a museum that is actually dedicated to lawyers and trials, which sounds weird, but in Paris, you've got some pretty great ones that have happened. I like to call it the museum that's filled with the people that Paris named streets after, because when you go in there, you'll recognize, if you know the streets of Paris, you're going to recognize just about every name. It sounds kind of strange to go check it out, and it's not like a big fancy museum in any way. It's definitely one where, it's like a small group of people put this thing together. The building itself is really cool, but it has stuff in there from some of the biggest court cases in French history, including Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI. They have the actual key that locked up her cell at the conciergerie. There is a bunch of stuff about the Dreyfus affair and the trial of Émile Zola. So you have court, papers and, the newspapers and all of this stuff. And they have paintings from some of this stuff. It's really interesting. If you're in that area, you could pop in there for, 45 minutes to an hour and go check it out. Last time I looked, it was closed, and it looked the whole gate going into it. It's right next to the fire station. The whole gate going in front of it is like completely boarded up. But it doesn't show that it's like just been closed. So hopefully it will reopen. Yeah.
Survive.
But the building is really cool. It dates back to 1655 when the alderman of Paris was also a fishmonger. Antoine de la Porte was very wealthy, and he put up many of the buildings that were in this whole entire area. His initials can be found on the ironwork over the door. And it's kind of interesting because the entrance is, you kind of go right past the Pompier station, and then there's just kind of a tiny little courtyard, and you go into the courtyard and the buildings on the right. The facade of it is really pretty. His son Philippe de la Porte inherited the building and lived on there his entire life without an heir. It was passed through the many hands. It was a hotel at one point, a butcher shop, a notary, a lawyer's office until 1979, when the Paris Bar acquired it and opened it into a museum in 1983. But the stone staircase in the center of it is original from 1655, and it's pretty cool.
That is cool. 1655. Wow.
Yeah. And I went in there and I was like, oh, taking all these pictures of the stair, trying to get pictures, like the really cool of you see from the center of the stairs. And the girl working at the desk was probably shocked somebody was even coming inside. But they just looked at me like I was kind of crazy the whole time. And then it's very small. You go downstairs, and it's kind of just, it's not a big museum at all. But it is fairly interesting. If you've definitely listened to our episodes in the past, you're definitely going to find things in there that we have talked about.
Yeah, guys, just take our podcast on the go. That is the lesson of this show.
It is. And it's kind of perfect. I've done that. There's some books that I've done. There was a gal that wrote a book. And I think we did it when we had our book club during COVID, called Paris to the Past. And it was all done by taking the train from Paris within a certain period, certain distance. And she did one about Fontainebleau, and it was so cool. I did listen to it on my way to Fontainebleau one time. And then when I was there, I listened to it. And then I was like, listening to her talk about these things while we were there. And it was so cool. That's why I was like, oh, let's just turn some of these into whole episodes.
Yeah, because it means so much more when you know the history of what you're looking at. And it's so easy to take this on the go.
Yeah. And maybe you don't want to stop and read things. And sometimes it's just easier, just to listen to it as you go. And it's just right there in front of you. So, I mean, it was pretty cool to see the key that, sadly locked up Marie Antoinette.
Yeah. Sadly locked up Marie Antoinette.
Sadly locked her up. But right outside, we're going to talk about Saint Eustache next week. But right outside of Saint Eustache, there is a huge sculpture. It's called L'Écoute by Henry Miller in 1986. It is a huge, like basically concrete face, and he has his kind of his hand up to his ear, like he's listening. If you saw the remake of Sabrina with was it Julia Armand, was that her name, and Harrison Ford, but it also has my favorite Patrick Bruel in it. They filmed part of it right there, so you'll if you've seen that movie, when you go here, you're going to recognize it. It's also right there on the edge of the Jardin Nelson Mandela, which was created in the 1980s. It was recently completely renovated and redesigned. It's a great place to go on a very hot Paris day, because they have those splash pads that you could walk through with the water, in the mist coming at you. So it's kind of nice. This is also where the horrible metro monstrosity station is of Châtelet.
Yeah, I hate that station. I avoid it like the plague.
Oh yeah. I mean, I look on there and I'm like on the SNCF website and I'm like, nope, I'll just do it.
Yeah, I'll do anything but that. Nope.
And sometimes it's almost impossible, but I will go so far out of my way, because that thing is just humongous and it's just confusing. And I'm like, I got lost in it one time and I just gave up.
Yeah, and then you just feel like you're wasting so much time trying to find your metro. It's exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where it's kind of like, okay, it was what, €2 for me to do this. It could have been €8 for me to take the taxi.
Yeah, never mind. I agree.
Yeah. But so this is at Les Halles. So this is what we call as Les Halles. And that this whole area at one point, this is what we were talking about, was the first market of Paris. It was actually stood, the very first one stood at the Place de Grève at the Hotel de Ville, where later they, were killing people with the guillotine, and where they killed Henry IV's guy that killed him.
Mhm.
And we'll tell you about that horrible story here in a minute. But at the same time, this was also set up that they set the king's pillory here as well. And what that was a large pillar that was used kind of as the scales of justice. It would have up to 5 or 6 people that they would tie to the pole. And these people would just basically hang there. And so basically you were humiliated, and like these people did something bad and they were humiliated.
What?
Yeah. Super random.
Oh my
Yeah. So when the market first moved here, it was called Chapignon. It was literally a field. It was outside of the city at this point. It was mostly just for where they changed money. And it was also, they sold dry goods like textiles and things like that. The first building was added in 1183 when Philippe Auguste added the wall. In the 15th century, the food stalls were added and included the Bourse de Commerce as the grain market. So it makes sense that grain market was so close. But in the mid 1850s is where it was kind of turns into what we kind of know. That is when the famous market stalls of Victor Balton were added. They were iron and glass, and they were designed to replace the many different wood structures that were there, and actually a lot of the homes that were there as well. In 1818, the meat market was added, and it's followed by the fish market, then the dairy market, and a few years later, goods sold basically came from 100-kilometer radius of Paris came there to be sold.
What? That's really far. Like,
yeah,
coming from there. Wow.
Yeah, and the original pavilions that were there were built with stone and wood. But when Napoleon III was in London, he saw this market that was done with metal. And he thought this was great. We need to do this. And so they were already rebuilding some of the structures that were there. And he basically told them to stop what they were doing, tear them down, and then wanted these really cool iron structures built instead.
Well, why not?
I know, exactly. I mean, I guess if you're an emperor, you could do that.
Exactly. You do what I say, or you die.
But for over 100 years, it was a market. It was known as the Belly of Paris because Emile Zola wrote a book about that, and it was called The Belly of Paris. His 5-page dedication to the fromagerie that was there is a must read. He says the cheese symphony, basically of the smells, the butter and the cheese was a musical way that played a symphony.
What?
And that you really can't describe having cheese and butter better than that.
Yeah, I mean, that's poetry right there.
That is perfect. The whole area that when they ended up tearing this down in 1971, because after they moved in 1969, they moved the entire market out to Rongy. In 1971, the market was destroyed. 2 years later, the rest of the pavilions were taken down, which I wish my grandparents would have gone, because the first time they went there was 1972. I would have died to have some photos of that, but they didn't go there. Or didn't take photos of it. But you could still find a few of the pavilions. There is one in the town of Nogent-sur-Marne, which is also a place where you could find some of the original pieces of the Pont des Arts.
That's cool. The original pieces are there.
Yeah, so I really want to go out there. I really want to go out there and see both of those things. But another piece of it was sent off to Japan.
Why?
Yeah, they bought it.
Oh, okay.
The pieces. But you can go, there's the right in really close to the Square du Temple over there in the Marais. There is a building very close to that. Well, that will give you the idea of what those stalls look like. It's a really, really cool building. But now it's like got that ugly, some people call it the magic carpet, that piece of whatever glass, and it's kind of like gross yellowish color.
Yellowish.
But it's like a giant mall there now. I mean, you have like Sephora and you have everything, and they have a Lego store, which the stuff in the Lego window they're pretty cool. But because last time they had like this huge Lego Notre Dame, but there's like the Fnac down there, but it's a giant mall now.
Yeah, it's just a mall now. It's not like a
Yeah.
food stall covered in rats. It's a mall.
Yeah. No, and that was built in 2010. The canopy itself was designed by Patrick Berger. They won that in a competition, but some people call it a magic carpet, other people call it an ugly flying saucer.
Yeah, I could get on the magic carpet one. I like that. That's fun.
Yeah, it is kind of a magic carpet.
Yeah, I'm into
Yeah.
that.
But right next to that as well is the Fontaine des Innocents. It is a really cool fountain, and we'll tell you more about that one next week.
Yeah, make sure you tune in next week, guys, because we got a lot to talk about in this area. And make sure you head over to ClaudineHemingway.com to get more information and chat with Claudine.
Thank you for listening to Paris History Avec a Hemingway. If you want to find out some more, you could always find me on my Instagram page, Claudine Bleu Blanc Rouge, and that's BLEU, as in the French way to spell it. And each day I post a daily history lesson about a person or a place or something in Paris, or it's lots of fun facts. And then also at ClaudineHemingway.com, where you can also sign up for my newsletter there.